Hey friends, straight ahead on Skipping the Sheets, which of the cast was a thief behind the scenes? Chantel admits to flirting with Colt, you heard that right, and who showed his homemade sex tapes to the other singles? I watched 90 Day Hunt for Love Between the Sheets, episode 10, The Boy with Pepperoni Nipples, so you don't have to. This week we are back at that beautiful cenote. It looks like the most peaceful place in the world. However, no one is choosing peace. Tiffany and Rob are now convinced that it was Carlo who started that whole rumor about Elise and Rob hooking up. That has been about 10 episodes in the making, and it seems like we're finally getting it wrapped up a little bit. But is this the beginning of the end for Tiffany and Carlo? Let's keep that in mind while we talk a little bit more. Meanwhile, Jeniffer admits at the beginning of Between the Sheets that she has this new budding friendship with Elise. Surprise, surprise there. But as Jeniffer always does, she drops some insults in there. She's like, yeah, I forged this friendship with Elise because I really felt bad for her. She can't get any dates. Nobody likes her. And I thought I'd throw her a little attention. Right? Because that's what everyone at the resort is dying for, is Jennifer's attention. Does she do anything that seems genuine to all of you? I'm thinking back to even when she was with Tim on the show a million years ago. She always seemed performative. It always seemed like her actions were calculated, and I just wonder if we are getting to know the real Jeniffer at all ever on this hunt for love. Elise, meanwhile, says actually what was going on here was that Jeniffer would like to have a threesome with me and Rob. However, Elise is like, that would be too much drama. Can you imagine? Although I'm sure the producers were dying for it. Here's a little bit of drama from that triangle, though. Elise says that once they started hanging out more, Jen was in the position, I don't know, to be in her room or something, and Elise noticed that Jen stole one of Elise's shoes. And she and Tim are sitting on the Between the Sheets couch talking about this, and Tim goes, wait a minute, she stole just one of my shoes as well. And it sounds like these were expensive. Elise is like, it was my Chanel slides. I think Tim said it was some kind of Versace something or another. So what is going on here? Is Jeniffer a klepto? Was she meaning to take one at a time, thinking no one would notice? I think this is more of Jeniffer being childish and petty, and I think one out of a pair of shoes disappeared when she's around, because then you can't wear your Chanel slides, Elise. Tim, you can't wear your fancy shoes, and I know he's all about that, right? So Jennifer's trying to throw people off, and I think she's mad at maybe what some people have that she doesn't have. She just could not look worse here. I think that every week, and yet Jen gives us more and more childish behavior. She is not the only one who gets thrown under the bus this week, though. We see a lot more of Rocky, not only on the show, but for the first time on Between the Sheets too, and there's a lot of conversation about him. Tim's like, I cannot stand Rocky. He is not attractive, he's weird, and I honestly, we like to be nice here, but Tim said it and I could not agree with him more. There is just something about Rocky that creeps me out. It's probably the porn stash. If you want to walk around looking like a perpetrator, that is your business. But like, you've accomplished that then, bro. I'm scared of you. I think you're gross. And Tim kind of reinforces all of this for us. I respect Tim's opinion. And Rocky doesn't do himself any favors when he finally does get to talk. He explains that his whole game plan here at the resort was to throw all the lines in the water and see what bites. How incredibly eloquent. He says that he and Jeniffer, so Rocky and Jeniffer, we saw nothing of this on screen. He said they had a few off-camera talks and that they never had their opportunity. Okay, so Rocky wants us to know that he could have had Jeniffer if he wanted, but he just didn't really try to make the time. And also, Rocky adds that he would not stick his D in crazy. That is so incredibly rude, and I may have just said the same things about Jeniffer. We didn't call her crazy here because I don't like that whole narrative of the crazy woman, but Rocky does. And so if he's going to say a whole bunch of gross stuff and kind of back up his image that is forming for him here at the resort, to say don't stick your D in crazy about Jeniffer was probably just the next step for him. So yeah, we're getting to know Rocky and not really caring much for what we are getting to know there. He also explains that Tiffany is more his type than Chantel, who we saw him ask out on a date. That's gross. Now we're fetishizing women, and proves that Rocky had some ulterior motives in asking Chantel on a date. And we'll get to a little bit more of that, the Chantel, Joe, and Rocky of it all. But first, I want to hone in a little bit on something that Colt said. And Colt reiterated this a couple of times. Colt says he suspected that Rocky was gay. And now we're not outing anyone here or, speculating on people's sexuality. I kind of wondered the same thing, or perhaps Rocky is bi. Remember, we had Nikki, also one of the other singles, reveal that she's bisexual a few episodes ago. And I predict that maybe the producers were going for a little bit of that. They were wondering if there would be some same-sex connections that would form. So if Colt suspects that Rocky wanted to sleep with him, maybe he's right. And that's something that we're going to have to ask some more questions of now that we have Rocky sitting on the Between the Sheets couch, right? We are clearly nowhere near this season wrapping up, and it is just getting juicier all the time. Chantel is jumping in after a couple of weeks of not seeing a whole lot of her. She explains on Between the Sheets, she's kind of setting the tone for what went down between her and Joe at the cenote. And she explains that he was talking to all the girls there. So it's like, Chantel, did you go for Rocky because you were trying to make Joe jelly? Well, they give us a little never before seen scene of Chantel and Joe getting really close on the beach. Joe is giving her a massage, and that's when Chantel drops this little tidbit about how she plans to have a breast reduction when she gets home from the resort. Whoa! That's huge news. That is a big change to make to someone's body, and obviously would be a huge change for Chantel. And then something that I'm sure we'll get to follow her journey on a little bit, on 90 Day Diaries. We saw her get her tummy tuck and her scar removed. So I'm sure that's something that producers will keep us updated on. However, Tim is against it. I have to say I was a little surprised to hear him on Between the Sheets really try to encourage Chantel. Don't go too small. We gotta save the meat. He says that could be on a t-shirt. He wants her to keep what is removed and bury it in a ceremony. That's how special Tim thinks Chantel's breasts are. And I like that he is giving her such props here, but did we suspect that Tim was like such a boob guy? I mean, that's a little bit of a surprise. I guess when you've got cup size L, which Chantel reveals to us all here, you just got all the boys going crazy. She has to have her bras specially made. And for any men listening, or my fellow women who are not in that position, I have friends who are, and holy crap, is that an inconvenience when you're moving, when you're shopping, when you're buying. It's just as like, I feel for Chantel in this. Okay, and you know what? If Chantel wants to get a reduction for her health, she mentioned her back hurting last week, then you go, girl. We support you on that. I'm not entirely sure that we can support her budding relationship or whatever it is with young Joe. Chantel does say that she cleared her date with Rocky with Joe. And I think Joe played it like a little bit too cool in that conversation. He's like, yeah, you do you get to know everybody here, and I'm gonna do the same. Oh, really, Joe? Like showing Courtney and some of the other singles your sex tapes? Yeah, this is one of the biggest drops we get on all of Between the Sheets. And of course, it comes from Courtney, the tea queen. She explains that Joe showed them all videos of him receiving oral sex. And it sounded like there were some others as well. So Courtney is wondering, like, how many of the singles did Joe hook up with? And I would like to know that too. And I think we are finally gonna get into next week. I'll talk about it at the end. 2 of the singles did hook up. And so producers are going to finally admit that there's some of that going on. And I think that's gonna bring a whole nother messy layer to all of this. Because also, Carlo revealed that it was rumored that Joe and Sierra, one of the other singles we haven't seen a lot of, that they hooked up, and also that Joe had a thing for Nikki. Nikki, who seems like her BS meter is like very high, and she kind of wasn't having it with a lot of these guys, so I doubt that Joe got it in with Nikki, but apparently he was out there doing his thing. So what about Miss Chantel? She's talking to Joe, she's taking a date from Rocky. What about 2 months ago in episode 2 or whatever it was, when Colt revealed on Between the Sheets that Chantel was flirting with him on one of those first bus rides back from the first time they went out to the club? Remember, Colt said she was touching his leg and she was all up in his face, and that Colt actually thought he had a chance with Chantel. Finally, they address this together on camera. They are sitting on the couch together, and Colt goes, hey, Chantel, remember when you were flirting with me? There was this time on the bus, and I kind of thought XYZ was going to happen, right? When Colt is saying this to Chantel, I assumed her reaction was going to be like, what the F Either she doesn't remember, he had mentioned she was quite intoxicated, or she's going to pretend not to remember. She's just going to straight up deny it, like call him crazy. But she didn't do any of that. Chantel did not seem bothered at all by being told about her drunken behavior. She didn't seem surprised. She didn't deny it at all. And she either did remember doing it and wasn't going to deny it, thinking that maybe there was video, or she really legitimately did not care that we all know that she was flirting with Colt. That seems like dangerous territory there, girl. We have seen Courtney, too, who knows all of his exes, start to fall for him, and that's developing. I think that's a slippery slope, Chantel, and let's keep our face out of Colt's face after several drinks. Okay? Just a little advice from Christy. On a side note, Between the Sheets has had these crazy weird games that they play on every episode, and some have been silly and some of them have been kind of revealing. This week they play like guess the guy's nipples, and I just have to say the fact that they are objectifying the men for once with the title of the show and with this game and all the conversation that the cast had about the men's nipples, it was refreshing. We've talked here a lot about how there is so much conversation about the way women look, and whenever there's a Reddit post about Chantel or Darcy or anybody else, all the comments are about their physical appearance. So for the producers to kind of take that heat off the girls a little bit, I think this week, and put it on the guys, the guys took it very well, as they should. A guy who's not taking things so well, though, can you guess? Usman just provided me a wonderful segue there because he is not having the best week. So Colt is watching the scene where Usman is kissing Courtney when she is trying to make that recording for Colt, and Colt is disgusted, but Usman plays totally dumb when he is on Between the Sheets. He said he's not going to stop cuddling up to Courtney and all that just because Colt broke his leg, and he is not sorry. Oh, Usman, you weren't trying to bother Colt in this video that Courtney was going to send him while he was at the hospital waiting to get surgery? Really, bro? Come on. Usman doesn't seem that unkind, and I think he really needs to watch himself here with his behavior while Colt is sitting in the hospital. Because, yeah, it's a big deal. Courtney's there with him. She's acting like his wife, I think more like a good friend, although Usman said like his wife. She's going through a lot there, too. Courtney saw Colt's D for the first time while she was there taking care of him in the hospital. So I wouldn't assume, Usman, that this is going to be a bad thing for you. Because she talks a little bit more about that. She confirms, yeah, when she was taking that video and he accidentally flashed her, that was her first little sight of it. And also that while he was there, Colt had to go to the bathroom in a glass jar because he couldn't move and all of that. And that's a lot of information, right? But it kind of just helps remind us, while Usman is making jokes about all this and Courtney is, kind of forced to return to the resort and just sort of pick up where she left off, what Colt is going through is seriously a big deal. It's very dangerous. It's very touch and go. They talked about his ambulance ride that could have caused internal bleeding and all of that. So Colt is really in a tough spot here. He's probably in a lot of pain. He is there alone, and he just really didn't need Usman piling on. Tim offers a little more insight here on Between the Sheets. He reveals that he calls Colt the vagina whisperer because he is so good at getting women to sleep with him. Well, you could have fooled me, first of all. And second of all, Elise kind of chimes in and she's like, really? I wouldn't sleep for him even for $40,000. And that just kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of how much money would you have to get paid to sleep with Colt or anyone else that you like or dislike from this cast? It's kind of an interesting conversation, right? Maybe that's a little game we could play over here on Skipping the Sheets sometime. What is very entertaining in all of this, and it's okay for us to laugh at it, is Usman telling Courtney that he loves her. The rest of the cast thought it was pretty freaking hilarious too when they're watching it back, and I think laughable is really the only way. It's not sad. You're not fooling us. We're not buying into this Courtney is being emotionally manipulative to me thing. Usman has made some bad moves the last couple weeks, and saying that all American women cry too easily, and again accusing Courtney of emotional manipulation when she's upset and she's in this terribly lose-lose situation just because she's talking about Colt, her friend who's in the hospital. I think she's justified in having some tears. And if Usman is basing his experience with American women on what happens with American women on camera, he should think about that again. Also, what we know about Usman's other relationships and experiences with American women were baby girl Lisa, not a crier, more of a yeller. And so what happened there? And Kimberly, who we all love, and she's a tough chick. She's a military gal. Thank you for your service, Kimberly. So I'm guessing that baby girl Lisa and Kimberly weren't crying over your ass. And so you're just making a big deal out of Courtney doing so. Usman, think before you speak, babe. Okay? Colt says, you just don't want to look like a loser. And I think he's right. So let's wrap this up with just a couple of random reveals, little tidbits that were dropped throughout between the sheets. Cole, we're talking about Cole now, revealed that he drives a 2006 Kia. Okay, no judgment here, no shade. I just was surprised to hear that because he's a pilot. He's been in the military, single 28-year-old guy. It just seems like he would, I don't know, drive a big SUV or like a truck, like maybe something that he's compensating for. He talked, remember, early on in the series about how he's kind of jealous of those cool guy types. And it seems like if you're trying to put up a facade and make people think that you are one of those cool guys, that you drive something other than a 2006 Kia. I don't know, just saying, I don't know. You guys can weigh in on all of that. And one more random reveal. We did get a Shelby name drop on this episode. You know I'm going to keep track of all of these for you. She was mentioned in a conversation about which of the women have had plastic surgery. And I believe it was Tim or one of the other guys, they're all looking real closely, revealed that Elise and Shelby were the ones who have had breast augmentation surgery. So that must have been something that they talked about, that she was open about on the show, because he definitely didn't hesitate to drop that little tidbit. There is a little bit of, not what I would call news, but more like some interview bites that shine a little bit more of light on what was all going down here at the resort. So Elise dropped in an interview that she says she was told that this was just a dating show in Tulum with relationship coaches and a lot of hot singles. Right? So we've wondered a lot how much the singles knew about what they were getting into, and it's clear that it was absolutely nothing. Elise and Courtney have been on a little bit of a press tour. You know, last week they were the ones who dropped that the tell-all has been filmed. So if you guys want to hear about what exes might have popped up there, make sure you go back and watch last week's episode of Skipping the Sheets. Courtney also said in an interview that Hunt for Love didn't even have a name up to the point where they were filming Between the Sheets. So I think that's very interesting. What Courtney knew about it is that there would be other 90-day people there. She was hoping to see her friend Vanya, and honestly, I think that would have been great. Fans love Vanya, and she is just so beautiful and just so bright and colorful on screen. She really spices things up. I think that would have been a good move. Look out for Vanya on season 2. But Courtney also was a little bit nervous that like maybe Big Ed or Angela would show up. The 90-day producers like to throw those people in to cause a fuss when they need to, but they knew that like this was not the time or the place to do that. Right, so thank you, because we didn't want to say, Courtney, we didn't want to see Angela or Big Ed there either. And just one more little tidbit, do not forget about Chantel and her friend Ashley, who shared a kiss before she came to the resort. I think there's going to be a lot more talk about that in the next couple weeks. One of the cast members mentioned how Chantel wasn't mixing much with the rest of the cast at this point. She was really in her room talking on the phone to her family and friends quite a bit, so they're definitely going to address this. But what's going on in real time is Chantel commenting on Ashley's photos with hearts and fire emojis all over Instagram. Another one with a little heart eyes on Ashley's latest post. So Chantel seems to be expressing some love here. Some flames are going down between Chantel and Ashley. So I'm wondering if Ashley was one of the people who popped up at the tell-all. Gosh, I hope so. I always thought that she was gonna come to the resort, but maybe that happens too. You guys, Hunt for Love has been so good, so much better even than I thought. And next week we are getting probably the biggest reveal ever, the biggest bomb drop of the whole show next week. Elise and Carlo had sex. I don't even want to say like hooked up or anything, because they like, for lack of a less mature phrase, they went all the way, and everybody's going to know it. Everyone's going to talk about it. Okay, so what does that mean for Carlo and Tiffany? They also have a conversation about something that he did We now know what that is. There's a little preview of next week's episode that's out online, and that is how we know that Elise and Carlo hooked up. Not only that, the cast is gonna do some chair dances, little lap dances on between the sheets. Courtney will explain when she caught feelings for Colt. That is very important. We're surprised that she's going that way. And it seems like in real time now that they are not really in favor with each other. So yes, please, Courtney, explain. Tell us more. Jen and Rob talk about him visiting her in Colombia, and then she goes immediately to hang out with Cole. So that love triangle has not eliminated any of its points anytime soon. So more Jeniffer, Rob, Cole drama. That's fine, because we just can't get enough of it. So I will be back here next week, breaking it all down for you. The news, the recap, and anything juicy that's going on in real time with this cast. I'm playing around with things a little bit. I waited a day on this one because I wanted to see if TLC would put out some more news or spoilers. And that's what happened. We got Elise and Carlo's hookup. So normally these will go up on Tuesdays, and I am totally open to you guys telling me what you like the most, and kind of making this into that. So thank you so much. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. But please subscribe to my YouTube channel. That is where all the good, juicy, up-to-date stuff is. I dropped a video a few days ago. Where is Jasmine's baby? Everybody wants to know, explaining all of that and some of the other questions that you might have while watching Happily Ever After. Are Tiger Lily and Adnan really rich? What's going on with Julia and Brandon? Yeah, you got to go check out my video on that. And the one that's going to drop a little bit later this week is 90 Day Fiancé real or fake? Oh yes, I did a deep dive on that one, and it is juicy. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you next week for more Skipping the Sheets. Bye-bye.